history is full of fascinating events, ideas, and people that have shaped our world in ways we may not even realize. From the bizarre story of the world's shortest war, to the dark secrets of notorious gangster Al Capone, and the tragic fate of the Library of Alexandria, there are many stories from the past that can surprise, shock, and enlighten us. Join us as we explore 10 little-known facts from history that will expand your knowledge and leave you with a newfound appreciation for the power of the past. Let's dive in. In a world torn apart by greed, power, and ideology, the wars between people raged on for centuries. It started with small skirmishes between neighboring tribes and escalated into large-scale conflicts between empires, each vying for dominance and control over vast territories. The battles were fierce and brutal, with soldiers fighting on foot, horseback, and later with guns and artillery. As technology advanced, so did the nature of warfare, with new weapons and tactics emerging that increased the death toll and destruction. Our first fact is about a record-setting war. Number 1. Imagine a war that lasted less than an hour. It sounds almost impossible, but it actually happened. The shortest war in history lasted only 38 minutes. It occurred between Great Britain and Zanzibar in 1896. The conflict began when Sultan Hamid bin Thuni of Zanzibar died suddenly and his cousin, Khalid bin Bargash, declared himself the new sultan. The British government, which had previously supported Hamid, demanded that Khalid step down and allow a pro-British candidate to take the throne. When Khalid refused, the British launched a surprise attack on his palace. The Sultan's forces, which consisted mostly of poorly trained civilians armed with outdated weapons, were quickly overwhelmed. Within 38 minutes, the palace was destroyed and Khalid was forced to flee. The British declared victory and installed a new sultan who was more favorable to their interests. The Zanzibar War remains a memorable example of the extreme power imbalance between colonial powers and the territories they controlled. Number 2. Visualize a world where tiny, furry creatures are used as explosive devices instead of traditional bombs. During World War II, the United States and Japan were planning on using bats as bombs. They were going to strap tiny incendiary devices to bats and release them over cities at night. The idea was to take advantage of the fact that bats are nocturnal and can fly into small spaces. The bats would roost in buildings and other structures, and then the incendiary devices would detonate, causing widespread fires. The US military even conducted tests to see if the idea would work, but the project was ultimately abandoned because it was too difficult to control the bats and too risky to handle the explosives. The Japanese also experimented with bat bombs, but they were similarly unsuccessful. While the idea of bat bombs might seem absurd, it highlights the desperation of military strategists during World War II to find any advantage they could. Number 3. Have you ever heard of a flight wrap made of human beings? In ancient Egypt, servants were covered in honey to attract flies away from the pharaoh. This bizarre practice was part of the Egyptian tradition of preserving the body of the deceased pharaoh for the afterlife. Honey was believed to have antibacterial properties that would keep the body from decaying. However, honey is also incredibly sticky and attracts flies, which can spread disease and contaminate the body. To prevent this from happening, servants were covered in honey and placed around the pharaoh's body to act as flypaper. Once the servants were covered in enough flies, they would be removed and replaced with fresh ones. While the idea of using servants as fly traps might seem shocking to modern sensibilities, It was considered a necessary sacrifice to ensure the pharaoh's body remained intact. Number 4. In the midst of the Great Depression, a notorious gangster known for his brutality did the unthinkable. He opened a soup kitchen to help the struggling masses. During the Great Depression, Al Capone, the famous gangster, opened a soup kitchen in Chicago to help feed the needy. Capone, who was known for his ruthless criminal activities, recognized the hardship that many people were facing during the economic crisis. He opened the soup kitchen in 1931 and served an estimated 3,000 meals a day to the unemployed and homeless. The kitchen also provided medical care, clothing, and other assistance to those in need. While some people saw Capone's charity work as a way to improve his public image, others recognized it as a genuine act of kindness that helped alleviate suffering during a difficult time. Number 5. What happens when you mix mind-altering drugs with national security? In 1956, the US Air Force experimented with using LSD as a truth serum during interrogations. The idea was that the drug would lower inhibitions and make subjects more likely to reveal sensitive information. The Air Force tested the drug on a number of volunteers, including one who was given LSD without his knowledge while attending a party. The experiments were ultimately deemed a failure, as the subjects often became confused or paranoid under the influence of the drug and were unable to provide reliable information. The use of LSD as a truth serum was eventually abandoned, but the experiments did pave the way for further research into the effects of LSD on the human mind. The CIA also conducted its own experiments with LSD during the 1950s and 60s as part of its controversial MKUltra program, which aimed to develop mind control techniques. The experiments were highly unethical and caused significant harm to the subjects involved, leading to widespread public outrage and calls for greater oversight of government-funded research. Number 6. Long before the days of televised athletic competitions, the ancient Greeks held their own Olympic Games in honor of the gods. The first recorded Olympic Games were held in 776 BCE in Olympia, Greece. The Games were held every 4 years and featured a variety of athletic events, including running, jumping, and throwing. The Games were dedicated to the god Zeus and were intended to promote physical fitness and sportsmanship. Only free men who spoke Greek were allowed to compete, and the Games were highly prestigious. Winners were awarded olive wreaths and were often celebrated as heroes in their home cities. The Olympic Games continued until 393, when they were abolished by the Roman Emperor Theodosius I for their pagan associations. The modern Olympic Games, which began in Athens in 1896, were inspired by the ancient Greek tradition. Number 7. In the medieval era, justice was sometimes determined not by evidence or testimony, but by a brutal fight to the death known as trial by combat, where the victor was believed to be chosen by God. The medieval practice of trial by combat allowed individuals to settle legal disputes through combat rather than a trial by judge or jury. The idea behind the practice was that God would intervene on behalf of the innocent party and ensure that justice was served. The practice was common in Europe from the 5th to the 16th centuries and was often used in cases of serious crimes such as murder or treason. However, trial by combat was gradually phased out as legal systems became more centralized and professionalized. The last recorded trial by combat in Europe took place in 1818 in France, where a man challenged his neighbor to a duel to settle a dispute over inheritance. Number 8. In 1918, a deadly virus began its relentless spread across the globe, leaving death and devastation in its wake. The Spanish flu, which swept the globe in 1918 and 1919, infected an estimated 500 million people and killed between 50 and 100 million. The flu was caused by an H1N1 virus that was unusually deadly, particularly for young adults. The origins of the Spanish flu are still debated, but it is believed to have originated in China or the United States and then spread rapidly around the world due to the movement of troops during World War I. The flu had a devastating impact on societies around the world, and its effects were compounded by the social and economic disruption caused by the war. Number 9. In the grand halls of Windsor Castle, a powerful queen held court. Her influence reached far and wide, but there was one issue that she was particularly passionate about, one that would change the course of history. Her efforts would shape the way an entire generation viewed an act that had long been shrouded in taboo, and would help pave the way for a new era of health and wellness. In the 19th century, Queen Victoria of Britain was a strong advocate for breastfeeding and believed that it was essential for the health of both mother and child. Victoria breastfed all 9 of her children, which was unusual for a queen at the time, and helped to destigmatize breastfeeding in Victorian society. She also established a breastfeeding room in Windsor Castle, which allowed her and other royal women to breastfeed in privacy. Victoria's advocacy for breastfeeding helped to promote the health benefits of the practice and contributed to its wider acceptance in the 20th century. Number 10. Deep beneath the waves of the Mediterranean Sea, lies the ancient ruins of a mystical library, once home to the world's greatest collection of knowledge and wisdom. The Library of Alexandria, which was founded in the 3rd century BCE, was one of the largest and most important libraries of the ancient world. The library housed an estimated 500,000 scrolls and was renowned for its collection of literature, science, and philosophy. It was also a center of scholarship and research, attracting scholars from around the Mediterranean world. However, the library was destroyed in a series of fires and conflicts over the centuries, and very few of its original texts have survived to the present day. The destruction of the Library of Alexandria is seen as one of the greatest losses of cultural heritage in human history, as it contained numerous works of literature, science, and philosophy that have been lost to time. The cause of the library's destruction is a subject of debate among historians, with some arguing that it was burned down by invading armies, while others suggest that it was destroyed over time by neglect and lack of funding. Despite its destruction, the Library of Alexandria remains a symbol of the power of knowledge and the importance of preserving cultural heritage. Thanks for joining us for this journey through history. We hope you enjoyed learning about these 10 fascinating facts that you probably didn't know before. From the shortest war in history to the rise and fall of infamous gangster Al Capone, and the mystery of the lost Library of Alexandria, there's no shortage of incredible stories to discover from the past. If you're a fan of facts and want to learn more, be sure to subscribe to Facts Fanatics channel for even more amazing content. We'll be bringing you more exciting and surprising facts about the world around us, so hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications to stay up to date with our latest videos. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.